Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, we're gonna be testing the AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX in Cyberpunk 2077. Oh yes. We finally managed to get in contact with AMD guys, and they sent this GPU out for a review. So I'll be bringing you guys a big video in like a week's time, testing 20 games on it. But for now, I kind of want to check out the new FSR3 implementation in Cyberpunk 2077, and what better card to try it out with than the 7900 XTX. You can see all of its specs right here in Tech Power-Ups. GPU Z resizable bar is also enabled, or AMD SAM. We got those gorgeous 24 gigabytes of VRAM. That's amazing. I really like to see it. And over on the left, I'm pairing it with a Ryzen 9 7950X 3D CPU with half of its cores disabled, making it pretty much the same as a Ryzen 7 7800X 3D, which is the best CPU for gaming. And I'm also using 32 gigabytes of DDR5 6000 MHz RAM in dual channel CL30. Let's get into it, shall we? Alright, let's go over the settings first. I am starting this at the very low resolution of 1080p. We will test higher resolutions, of course. And right now I'm using the Ultra settings preset without any upscaling and high textures over here. And I'm also going to disable these 3 or actually 4 options because I don't really like their effects, okay? Let's apply that. Everything else is set to the Ultra settings preset. Let's play the game now. Let's do this. It's been a long time, my friends. By the way, I can't wait to kill Bob. Yes, but that's not what I wanted to say. This is the most intensive for the CPU as well as GPU area in the entire map. And at 1080p resolution, we are actually seeing a CPU bottleneck. You can see that GPU utilization is not maxing out. CPU isn't either, but that's because the game doesn't really utilize all of the cores and threads efficiently, unfortunately, even after all of these years. Yes, it's not that well optimized, although compared to the recent titles that we've been getting in 2024, it is very well optimized indeed. But yeah, if I had a faster CPU, which doesn't exist at the moment, I'm not sure how the i9s work in this particular title, but it would be getting a bit higher FPS than this, and if it was in the base game as well, instead of the DLC and the Dogtown area, we would be seeing around 15% higher performance. I tested it there. In GPU bound scenarios, it gets around 15% higher FPS with the 7900 XTX at all resolutions. Also, that translates into whenever we get 100 FPS here in Dogtown, we would be getting 115 FPS in the base game. Obviously, but some people don't know about that, okay? Anyway, moving on, I think that's about it for 1080p resolution, guys. There's no point in testing it further than this because, well, it's a very low res for this GPU indeed. So let's bump it up to 1440p resolution, still utilizing the exact same settings over here. Ultra without ray tracing, obviously. I will still try some ray tracing, by the way. But yeah, this is where you're going to see like 120 to 130 FPS most of the time in the base game. And over here in the Dogtown area, they just wrecked my car just because I went there. We're getting drops down into the 100s and even 90s, as you can see. Still, it is a very good experience. Obviously, the GPU is very expensive, so I actually expected a little bit higher frames. But again, this is the most intensive part of the game, and compared to my RTX 4080 Super, it's actually performing slightly better. It's not a night and day difference if I didn't really have FPS numbers, and if I wasn't seeing things side by side, and I'm not, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between these two GPUs. They provide a very similar experience here in Cyberpunk 2077, and that's true for most titles, although the 7900 XTX in some titles will perform faster and in others it won't. Still, at 1440p, this is basically a flawless experience. It's still high refresh rate. I don't think you need more than 110 FPS average in a game like this. It's not multiplayer after all, so yeah, it's still high refresh rate experience like this. But if you need even higher FPS, you need to drop things down to high. And on high, you get a very big bump to performance. We might test that out in this video as well if we have time. I guess it's going to be like an half an hour video, as usual in Cyberpunk. But it is what it is. Now, something that I have been missing a lot in my life, guys, is killing Bob. in the recent games, we haven't killed Bob very often, right? Now, he's here. He's back here looking at us with that awful looking face of his. What are you doing in your phone? Wait, what? Isn't that like a chat, like WhatsApp or something? No. He's seeing things in portrait, but he's using the phone in landscape. That is so weird, Bob. What are you doing? Goodbye, Bob. Look at his jump, by the way. Oh, yes. Oh, finally, we got him, guys. Let's move away from here. The power utilization is quite high. Look at that, going up, spiking in like the 430 watt mark. Kind of insane stuff, actually. It reminds me of the RTX 4090 days when I had it here in the channel, you know. It's been a really long time. And now let's go up to 4K resolution, guys, utilizing exactly the same settings, still at native res with ultra preset. And as you can see, it's dropping from 60 FPS, unfortunately. I saw this coming, honestly, because my 4080 Super, which I play this game with, or used to play this game with, as my main GPU. I'm not sure which one is going to be my main GPU now, guys. I like the 24 gigabytes of VRAM, honestly, but it consumes more at the same time. It doesn't matter. That GPU was dropping into the mid-40s around this area, this roundabout, you know, and this one is definitely a bit faster, you know. It's not even dropping from 50 FPS right now at this moment. Could be because of differences in the time of the day in the game, but I'm not sure. I just think this is a little bit faster than the 4080 Super in Cyberpunk. Still drops into the 40s sometimes when there are more particle effects and so on screen, but yeah, I'm pretty sure the 4080 Super dropped into the low 40s using these settings. Now, there's still an advantage to the NVIDIA GPUs, obviously, and that is the upscaler. The LSS is still superior compared to FSR, obviously. Anyway, frame generation, oh my god, might save this GPU a little bit here at 4K, but to turn it on, we need to restart the game. It's not like NVIDIA's FG at this point in time in the current update of Cyberpunk 2077. The FSR3 frame generation only works after a restart, which I find to be pretty weird, and it also doesn't allow for exclusive full screen when you're using FG, which I also find it pretty weird, guys. Anyway, let's go with resolution scaling right now. I'm gonna use FSR3 on quality, no frame generation first. Again, I'll need to restart to use frame generation, so I'll restart later and see how it does. But yeah, using quality FSR here, it actually does look pretty good in this particular title. It's FSR 3.0, not 3.1. So unfortunately, you can't use FG with like XESS, for example, for a better looking image. If you want FG, you'll be stuck with the FSR 3 quality or whatever you choose, of course. Basically, you need an FSR to use FG in this current implementation. I wish they implemented FSR 3.1. It would be better in terms of visuals as well, because that's a big improvement. Now, I can see a bit of shimmering, not gonna lie, guys. Whereas with DLSS quality at 4K resolution, it looks extremely clean. This has some shimmery edges and some aliased edges, mostly on faraway objects, so it's not the end of the world. In my opinion, it's still very usable, and I would use it at 4K resolution, honestly. I don't mind a few flickers here and there, as long as it's above 60 FPS. I would play like this, guys, no worries. Oh look, Bob changed. His face is not like that other guy anymore, but he's still using the same thing on the phone. Of course, that's how you know this is still Bob, my friends. Goodbye, Bob. Let's go. I don't have a car this time around. Oh, this is terrible. Shooting at me. I don't have a way out. Come on, we need to grab another car. Also, whenever you're running around instead of driving around, the game gets more FPS. That's always been like that in Cyberpunk. And now 60s, 70s. Yeah, this is super stable. And if it's getting these FPS here, that means that inside of the base game, it's it's definitely going to be like 70 plus FPS the entire time. So very good results. FSR 3.0, yeah, it doesn't look as good as the DLSS once again, but it's super usable at 4K resolution. This game has a good implementation of FSR. It's not like Black Myth Wukong, for example, which looks extremely pixelated. This works great, and I would be fine using it. Absolutely. So let's stop it right there, and I think it's now time for us to check it out using FG. So we're in the main menu now, and if I go to the settings in the graphics over here and choose frame generation, turn it on, FSR3 frame generation, you can see that if I apply it, it says that we need to restart the game. Every other setting doesn't need a restart, but this one does. Okay, here we are, guys, back at it with 4K res. Now the exclusive full screen mode is not available anymore with this form of frame generation. FG is enabled. I'm gonna try it with native AA first instead of quality DLSS, and you can see that it actually locks our FPS to 120 inside of the menus alone, which is weird. Inside of the game itself, it goes up from 120 if I look at this guy. Now, the thing is, this is saying 62 FPS. That's a little bit better than what we saw at native resolution. It was constantly below 60 FPS in this area. But you can clearly see that this is not running at 60 FPS. Okay, and even if I lock the FPS to 60 over in this area, yeah, max FPS 60, it still goes over 60 FPS. It doesn't work for some reason. Like, I guess with FSR3 you need to lock your FPS for it to work properly. Unfortunately, that means that at 4K resolution you'll be targeting 60 FPS and you will be getting input lags of 30 FPS. And with the FPS unlocked, it's basically like we're running the game at like, what, 40 frames per second? Maybe even 30 frames per second? It feels like 30 frames per second. So I don't think FSR3 is working at the moment, or at least I'm sure it's not working properly. Now, I managed to lock our FPS using Rivet Tuner, okay? But as you can clearly tell, it feels and looks like 30 FPS. So the FG is not working, guys. That's very unfortunate. I was really looking forward to it. Why did CD Projekt Red take months? They announced that they were bringing FSR3 in December of 2023. And they've taken months to implement FSR3, and this is what they come with. It's not working. I mean, I could be doing something wrong, but come on, I tried to troubleshoot it and I couldn't do anything, so yeah, it's just not working, guys. Alright, so I just restarted everything and it's still the same thing. You can see it's definitely not 60 FPS that it's being displayed with the frame generation here. I tried disabling VRR as well. Didn't work. It was exactly the same. I tried locking the FPS and stuff as I showed you. Nothing works to make frame generation work. It could be my system. I have no idea. But for me, it's not working, so unfortunately, I can't really show you the actual experience with frame generation. Now, what I can do is show you the FPS that you would get if you manage to make FSR3 work. And that's 60 FPS on native resolution, and with quality FSR3, yeah, it looks way smoother now, but that's because it was already getting like 70 FPS or 80 FPS previously before frame generation. It's not a high refresh rate experience, it's just 70 FPS. It looks way better than the 30-ish or 40-ish that we were just seeing in terms of what's being displayed in the monitor at the moment. So yeah, if you manage to fix frame generation here, or if the developers fix it, which I feel like it's what they need to do, right? Or if you mod, for example, FSR3 FG inside of the game itself, which is another very nice option, you know, because that will work absolutely fine. These are the FPS that you will be getting. Again, I am not seeing the high refresh rate experience because it's bugged at the moment, but these are the FPS that you would be getting with FG enabled, and it would be a really, really solid experience, of course. It's now a high refresh rate one. It works even better in terms of the FPS that we're seeing on the on-screen display than the 4080 Super did with quality DLSS and frame generation, the NVIDIA frame generation. That was getting around 90 to 100 FPS. This is getting 130. Oh, look, it's the original Bob again. Are you putting it away for some reason, buddy? Goodbye, Bob! And goodbye to you, too. Actually, they weren't really shooting at me yet. I don't know why I did that. Yeah, they know that Bob is a bad person, obviously. Now, I'm not gonna touch FSR3's frame generation in this video again, because again, it's not working, so I'm just gonna keep utilizing the upscaling part of it, not the FG part of it. Let's apply this, and now I will try it on high settings instead, on native resolution as well. Still keeping the crowd density on high, because that's a CPU intensive setting. I'm still going to disable these options right here, and that's it. Instead of ultra settings, we're now on high settings. I'm gonna restart the game to make it full screen, and as you can see, it's now up into the 60s and 70s. So it's getting around the same FPS as ultra with FSR quality, but now we're at native resolution. And guys, native resolution does look that bit better, so I think I would choose these settings. If you're playing at 4K resolution with the 7900 XTX, do it on high, because it looks absolutely fantastic. It's also very, very smooth. And again, remember, this is in the Dogtown area, extremely intensive area. By the way, 69 FPS average. Nice. And it's just so smooth. Now, it's not a high refresh rate, oh my god, experience at this point. But in my opinion, it doesn't need to be in Cyberpunk, once again. As long as it stays above 60 FPS, I am completely fine with the experience. In terms of input lag, it's absolutely great because it's 60 plus FPS. Still, it's not frame generated stuff adding input lag. No, this is just native resolution, native frames. It's the OG experience, basically. No upscalers, no BS, just 4K native, high settings, looking fantastic, very crispy, and very smooth at the same time. Goodbye, Bob, once again. Nice trousers, by the way, I like those. Let's go. They're kind of invisible trousers in this day and age, Cyberpunk day and age, right? That's the camo of the future, I guess. Let's go. Let's go. Lots of guys shooting at us. I can't really call them policemen, right? They're not police. 60 FPS, oh boy, that guy almost died there. 60 FPS, 1% lows means, again, a really stable experience. It's phenomenal, guys, okay? Just play like this. No need for ray tracing either in this game. It already looks amazing on high. Okay. Let's go down to 1440p and try that out. Here we go, 2560 by 1440, same settings everywhere else. Oh boy. And now instead of seeing lower 100s, let me just start counting our FPS again. That was a bad stutter there. Instead of seeing lower 100s, we gained what, like 15 FPS, something like that. So these are actually the FPS that you get in the base game on ultra settings in native 1440p, interestingly, but this is Dogtown again, so you get them on high. Still, for that smooth experience across base game and the DLC, you can have it at 1440p high settings. It's going to be a high refresh rate experience all the way through. Obviously, in the base game, you'd be looking at like 140 frames per second, or maybe even 150 frames per second, which is insane, right? It's a proper high refresh rate experience. So yeah, it's just flawless here at 1440p high settings, and I would honestly have no problems playing like this. Now, moving on to 1920 by 1080 using the high settings preset. It's obviously going to be a CPU bottleneck because it was already a CPU bottleneck with ultra settings. You can get higher FPS in the base game because it's also less CPU intensive than this particular area. But yeah, you'll be looking at 30 plus FPS 100% of the time. That little stutter always happens there. I think it's the game auto-saving, okay? So just don't look into it. Yeah, 120 FPS plus, basically, all of the time. But the GPU still has a lot left in the tank. Look at that GPU usage. 60 to 75% most of the time. Right now, going up into the higher up 80s. Yeah, but it still has a lot left. If we had a faster CPU, we'd be seeing higher FPS. Maybe like 150 or 160 on average, which is fantastic. for 1080p, but I mean, who is playing at 1080p with a 7900 XTX, right? Come on. So that's about it for high settings, guys. Next up, I think we should try ray tracing, right? Should we also do path tracing? That's gonna get wrecked whenever we test that. But yeah, let's begin with ray tracing ultra here. No FSR, okay, native resolution first, but we will need to use some FSR upscaling. And I'm not going to touch anything else aside from the usual culprits here, motion blurs and so on, which I don't like. I'm also going to restart the game completely, make sure that ray tracing applies properly. So this is it, guys. Ray tracing on AMD isn't very good, as everybody knows already, I guess. And, well, it shows right here. Native 1080p resolution is dropping us into the 40s. But let me take a look real quick at the 4080 Super results. The 4080 Super was kind of getting these FPS, but at 1440p resolution instead of 1080p. And it wasn't even dropping into the 40s as often, guys. At 1080p, it was getting 80 to 90 FPS. It's just AMD's ray tracing isn't as good. And it shows, right? If you really want to use ray tracing, you gotta go for an NVIDIA card. And I'm gonna try it with FSR as well. Let's use FSR3 on quality. By the way, FSR3 and FSR 2.1 is exactly the same thing. If you don't use FG, FSR3 just has FG support. And let's do this, okay? Getting 90s. All right. I mean, it doesn't look bad. It's a little bit more... If it was an APU playing this, I'd be very happy, okay, with these graphics and this definition. But for such an expensive GPU, oh my god, what the hell? I wouldn't really bother playing at what is essentially 720p resolution, okay? Because this is 720p being upscaled to 1080p by the use of FSR3, and this is what you need to play with ray tracing enabled with good FPS at the same time on the 7900 XTX. It is a little bit of a shame. GPU usage isn't maxing out though. I wonder if it wasn't also maxing out even at... yeah. I didn't notice this, but GPU usage isn't maxing out whenever ray tracing is enabled, even at native resolution. So it could be because of game optimization, guys, with ray tracing for AMD GPUs, or it could be that this AMD GPU just doesn't fully utilize itself whenever RT is enabled. I don't know, it's the first time that I'm testing it here, so there's that. Alright? I'm gonna go ahead and try ray tracing overdrive instead. Okay, let's disable this. So native resolution first with RT overdrive. This is path tracing, all right? It's extremely intensive. Where is the ray tracing option? Ah, here it is. Ray tracing is on. Path tracing is on as well. It requires at least a 4070 Ti or a 3090 for it to work properly, and that's with DLSS plus frame generation, okay? Whoa. I wasn't expecting this. It just crashed. So here's what happened, guys. Cyberpunk 2077 flatlined, and we got a bug report tool saying that that was a driver timeout. Okay, we're back here, guys. I guess that was just a one-off driver crash or whatever. Timeout, as they said. Yeah, this is still path tracing, same stuff without the motion blurs and chromatic aberrations and stuff. And it is completely unplayable. Obviously, it's path tracing. I wasn't expecting it to be playable. So let's try to utilize some FSR3 on quality at the same time. And well, it's very shimmery right now because of 1080p resolution plus FSR. But it is now getting similar FPS to native res with ray tracing on ultra. Is that good? No. Don't use ray tracing with AMD GPUs is what I gathered from this. Okay, we need another card. Maybe this one. Hello, can I borrow your car just to complete the benchmark run and kill Bob? Weaponized vehicle. Okay. Anyway, it's playable now, but you're having less FPS than Radeon 780M integrated graphics playing at 1080p low settings. So what's the point, right? And we're even at a lower resolution than 1080p. If you want path tracing or RT, you need to go with an NVIDIA GPU, preferably the 4090, because, well, yeah, it requires a lot of power, okay? Goodbye, Bob, once again. And I guess that's been it for this one, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I hope you're as happy as I am for the 7900 XTX here in the channel. Finally, I got this GPU and I can't wait to test it out in more titles. So stay tuned in for a full review of it, and stay tuned in for more games that I will try in standalone videos just like this one. Catch you in the next one. Love you all. Bye-bye.